Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Sasti Alysa, and today I would like to present about my research paper entitled COVID-19 Pandemic, University Student Perspective on the Effectiveness of Online Learning in the Developing Countries. And here's the outline of the presentation. The first is introduction, and the second is literature review, and the third is method, and the fourth is finding and discussion, and the last is conclusion. And here's the introduction. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, all aspects of life change from simple aspect to the most crucial aspect of life. And the education is one of the aspects most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The cluster of school children is the most vulnerable and the greatest concern of the government and the parents. This is what underlies the occurrence of distant learning, or also known as online learning. There are several positive effects it can make student learning activities more flexible, and students can access learning at any time and repeatedly. Besides, students can also rely on by the teacher at all times. So when some question or the question are not clear, they can directly ask their teacher. However, online learning can be a new problem and new obstacle for education in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic for developing countries. For example, the level of the effectiveness of the method of teaching by online learning, and therefore this study is aimed at finding out what students in the developing countries think about the effectiveness of online learning in developing countries. And here's the research question of this paper. So the first is, how do university students perceive the effectiveness of online learning in developing countries? And the second is, how does this online learning method affect the physical and mental health of university students? And the third is, what are the toughest challenges of doing online learning for most university students? And the next is the literature review. So the first is online learning definition, and we decided to use the definition from the U.S. Department of Education that define online learning as the learning that takes place partially or entirely over the internet. And this definition excludes purely print-based correspondence education, broadcast television, or radio video conferencing, video cassette, and standalone educational software programs that do not have a significant internet-based instructional component. And the second is developing countries. So in this study, we use classification used by the World Bank to determine the developing countries, because there is no precise definition to define developing countries. And the World Bank divides countries into four groups, namely low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and high income, using gross national income, or GNI, per capita valued annually in US dollar using a 3 years average exchange rate. And the third is online learning in developing countries in general. So in this study, we use the definition from UNESCO that explain e-learning or online learning has started to make its way into developing countries and is believed to have a huge potential for governments struggling to meet and growing demand for education while facing an escalating shortage of teachers. For being an affordable and more flexible alternative, e-learning is seen as a tool for increasing the number of students who have access to higher education, particularly marginalized groups in the rural areas. Okay, and the next we go to the methodology. So this is the methodology that I use in this paper. I used qualitative methods, and the target of population of this study where several students with different majors and from several higher education or university students in Indonesia. And the study uses semi-structured or in-depth interviewing is a scheduled activities. And the researchers contacted several potential participants who met the criteria as a student who have conducted online learning. And after obtaining and collecting the researcher began to analyze all the answer and examine this. Okay, and we go to the next slide. That is the finding and discussion. So the first finding and discussion is university student perception on the effectiveness of online learning. So based on interview conducted, the majority participants say that the level of effectiveness of online learning in the developing countries has not been effective. The effectiveness here is assessed from the various aspects. There are absorptions of learning material, Wi-Fi or data availability and signal stability, and the third is expertise in using technology. So in terms of Wi-Fi or quota availability and signal stability can also be an ineffective online learning. Maybe the assistance to the student, but in fact, this assistance has not been evenly distributed. Indonesia's geographical condition is also made signal stability in the areas uneven and often experience signal interference, especially when it's rain. In terms of expertise in using technology in developing countries, like Indonesia, are said not to be ready for this because this is due to uneven distribution of technology, especially in the rural areas. Uneven distribution of this technology makes expertise in using technology very difficult to achieve. And the opinion of participants about ineffectiveness of online learning in the developing countries are supported by the previous research conducted by Purwanto et al. Entitled Studi Eksploratif Dampak Pandemi COVID-19 terhadap proses pembelajaran online di sekolah dasar. And in this study, it was explained that the ineffectiveness of online learning was felt by both teacher and student. For elementary students, for example, feel forced to study remotely without adequate facilities at home, and this facility is very important to conduct the teaching and learning process. For online learning at home, facilities such as laptop, computers, or mobile phones should be provided first to make it easier to students to listen to the online teaching and learning process. Okay, and we go to the next slide, uh, which is the online learning method affects the physical and mental health. So all participants agreed that online learning was detrimental to their physical and mental health. For the negative impact or physical impact, for example, the most of them complain fatigue, dizziness, eye pain from staring at the laptop and the cell phone screen for too long. So they use glasses to reduce eye pain. And they are also worried that this will cause myopia or increase myopia in their eyes. Meanwhile, from the negative impact of mental health, most of them complain about stress, depression, due to the large number of tasks assigned to them. Stress and depression are also caused by pandemic that makes them unable to leave the house to release fatigue and stress. The physical and mental impact of this online lecture was also explained by Mrs. Fatma Kusuma Mahanani, who are the who is a psychological and lecturer psychology of UNES. According to her, online lecture can cause physical and mental health problems from mild to severe. What is commonly experienced according to the survey that have been conducted, usually students when they have to um, face with online lecture, they feel anxious, stressed. For students who are not able to adapt quickly, the stress is prolonged and may lead to the indication of depression. And the symptoms are usually will arise from physical and psychological based on the survey that conducted by APPI or Indonesian Educational Psychology Association. This physical problem experienced by students during online lecture include apathy, stinging, muscle tension, difficulty resting, impaired appetite, and eating too late. And the next finding and discussion, or the last finding and discussion, is the toughest challenge of doing learning for university students. So, in answering in answering the question about the toughest challenge, participants had different views depending on what they are experiencing. But most of them agreed that the toughest challenge of online learning was maintaining physical and mental health amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So the challenge of online learning are indeed diverse, and each participant has a different view in seeing and facing the challenges of online learning. In addition to what was explained by the participant, the learning challenges from the previous study that conducted by Simak Mata and Simak Mata with the research entitled Tantangan Penerapan Sistem Belajar Online bagi Mahasiswa di Tengah Pandemi COVID-19. Based on this study, they describe the many challenges faced by online learning, including the teaching and learning process that was considered ineffective, that the tasks that were burdensome and had an impact on student physical and mental expensive internet costs, availability of internet services and unstable operator signals, time limit between assignment and quizzes, disruption of homework assignment given by parents, discipline in teaching and learning process, difficulty maintaining health amid COVID-19 pandemic, and lack of empathy from both teacher or lecturer and student. Yeah, that is a lot of obstacle, and also that is the toughest challenge that student will face in the online learning. We go to the last part of this presentation, that is conclusion. So the conclusion of this research paper is this study explains university students' perspective on the effectiveness of online learning in the developing country. University students assume that it is still very difficult for developing countries to achieve effectiveness in online learning. This is evidenced by the absence of adequate facilities among students and teachers, namely the lack of expertise in using technology, lack of device ownership, expensive internet quotas, and unstable signal in the village area. Besides, online learning also has a negative impact on physical and mental health. Online learning also has tough challenges, especially in the condition of the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, I think that's all from my presentation. And thank you for watching and pay attention to my presentation. And thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.